Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of Superannuated Starman. As always, I'm your host, Sean Ryan, and with me is Chris Duerksen.
As always.
And Cory Braucks.
Most of the time.
Once again, we are joined by Sabrina, a.k.a. Sabi. Thank you so much for coming back on the show. Why don't you tell everyone what game we're going to be covering today?
I am so excited. Spyro the Dragon, the original PlayStation 1. I have been waiting for this. I have so much to say and so many notes to start.
That's right, folks. We are covering our first PlayStation game. We are stepping into the next generation. But before we start the history segment, I have been talking about this for months. And by the time that this podcast comes out, it's already too late. Today, as of this recording, is the last day for the Wii U and 3DS eShop. It's done. It's over. After today, there's no more downloading from it. No more new downloads. You can still get all your old stuff. But hopefully, you've been listening to this podcast and you've been paying attention and you bought everything that you wanted to buy because there's no more chances.
And listeners, if you forgot and you missed your chance, just remember that Yar Har Fibble McGee.
Read between lines, folks. So, let's take a quick break before we dive into the history of Spyro the Dragon. September 9th in 1998 in North America, and 1 month later in Europe, Spyro the Dragon was developed by Insomniac Games and published by Sony Computer Entertainment. Spyro was Insomniac's second game. The first was Disruptor, if you've ever heard of it, which had released 2 years prior. However, Disruptor didn't have the commercial success that they had hoped for, and so development on a new game started shortly after its release. Development for Spyro started after Craig Stitt, an artist on the team, suggested a game about a dragon. Taking inspiration from the film Dragonheart, the game originally started out as a more mature title with a dark and realistic approach, but direction changed as a part of the general effort to reach a younger demographic and compete with the more popular platform amongst children, the Nintendo 64. And before anybody tries to crucify me, no, I'm not saying that the N64 was a kiddie platform or anything like that, but the reality is that it was marketed to appeal more towards children, more so than the PlayStation. Even though there were a few rated M for mature games on the N64, like Conker's Bad Fur Day. Back to the development history, Spyro was one of the first games on the PlayStation to utilize shifting levels of detail among rendered objects, thanks to a panoramic engine developed by Alex Hastings. This meant that objects that were further away utilized fewer polygons until Spyro got closer and more detailed models were swapped in. And a neat bit of trivia about the game's original music. Stuart Copeland, the former drummer for The Police, composed the game's music. He was given an early build of the game, which included invincibility cheats so that he could clear levels easier. Copeland wrote 4 songs per day, all of which he further developed the following day. He has since gone on record to say that he looks back positively on his work on Spyro, calling it some of his best compositions. And this is just me talking, but I personally think that that's wholesome as hell. Even if we don't agree that they are the best of the best, the fact that he looks back on this game really fondly, that kind of warms my heart.
Oh yeah, definitely fondly. But I'm sure Sting,
Roxanne.
exactly. I'm sure Sting hearing him, say, oh, I love these recordings. It's
I
some of
don't
the
know,
best work
man.
of my
Like it's a
life.
different it's a different thing. Like he could be pleased about this and still enjoy his time with the police.
Yeah, for sure. But development on Spyro was difficult for several reasons. And keep in mind, this is still considered the infancy of 3D gaming, and especially semi-open world games. At the time, Spyro was unique when compared to other 3D platformers, specifically because of Spyro's ability to glide, which meant that players could cross almost the entire level if they were able to get a high enough vantage point. This made level design more difficult for the team, but meant that they could create more open-ended levels. Specializing in flight controls, Matt Whiting, an engineer from NASA, was brought on to help with programming camera movement as well as Spyro's own controls. Initially, the camera followed directly behind Spyro, but this caused high-speed camera movements, especially when the player would jump, to cause several of the playtesters to become nauseated. The camera was quickly changed so it would just stay steady. And despite a sluggish release, the game found larger success during the 1998 holiday season, and as of 2007 has sold nearly 5 million copies worldwide. The game established Spyro as a platforming mascot on the system alongside Crash Bandicoot.
As it should be.
And semi off topic, but talking about mascots, does anybody remember PlayStation's first quote unquote mascot?
I can't say I do.
No, definitely
This
not.
is Polygon Man. Polygon Man appeared in pre-launch ads, but he was largely forgotten after the console dropped until the release of PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale that released on the PS3 and PS Vita in 2012, where he served as the game's final boss. Anybody ever play that game?
No.
No.
No, I just looked him up now, and that does not trigger anything. I have no idea what that's from.
That's
Crazy. I played the hell out of the game. It was kind of Sony's answer to Smash Brothers.
I can see that.
Didn't do all that well, but it wasn't a bad game. Back to the history. After the original trilogy came along another trilogy of games titled The Legend of Spyro, which first released on October 10th of 2006, and the third game releasing 2 years later on October 21st, 2008. These games acted as a reboot to the original series. Although they received mixed critical reception, they sold well enough that a full-length animated feature film was in the works in 2007, but was eventually canceled with the reason cited being that Activision had decided to go in another direction, which was later revealed to be Skylanders: Spyro's Adventure, which was developed by Toys for Bob and published by Activision in 2011.
and has become a monster of sales,
I-
I'm sure.
Hate Skylanders.
Oh, I was gonna say the same thing.
They butchered my poor Spyro. He looks so like a Derposaurus. I don't like him. He looks so goofy. No. Sorry. Very anti Skylanders.
The whole Toys to Life kind of thing has had mixed success all in all. You have Skylanders, you have Nintendo's Amiibo, obviously. You have all of those Lego
The
sets.
Disney like Imagination Squad or whatever
Yes.
it is. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of those did well, others not so well. But Spyro had remained mostly dormant from this point until Spyro Reignited Trilogy, which was also developed and published by Toys for Bob and Activision respectively. Released in 2018 on the PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, it was later released in the fourth quarter of 2019 on the Switch and Windows. The Reignited Trilogy is a collection of remasters of the original trilogy on the PlayStation. The remaster remains mostly faithful to the gameplay of the original games, and most of the game's content is unchanged, with minor exceptions. One being that enemies originally wielded semi-automatic weapons, they now have paintball guns. And unlike the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, development was a collaborative effort between Toys for Bob and Insomniac Games, who, if you remember, were the original developers. Tom Kenny, who voiced Spyro the Dragon in Ripto's Rage and Year the Dragon, reprised his role in the Reignited Trilogy. He replaced Carlos Alazraqui, who was the OG voice actor. Stuart Copeland even returned to write a new main theme for the compilation, but he didn't write any other new tracks.
You said Tom Kenny, as in Tom Kenny from SpongeBob?
I didn't know that was SpongeBob's voice actor, but go ahead and check out IMDb real quick. and see if that's the case.
Will do.
It
Going
appears
to
to
the-
be that way.
Is that the case? I had no idea.
He did. Like, holy crap! I
Wow.
didn't know that.
Yep.
Well, now you know.
Insane.
And that's why I like doing these history segments, because sometimes they will spin off on these little tangents that are pretty neat, because I had no idea that that guy was SpongeBob.
Yeah, that is true talent. Like, I would have never guessed. That is crazy.
Spyro the Dragon starts off from the perspective of the player watching a television interview with a pair of dragons that insult the game's main antagonist, Nasty Nork. Nork being a combination of both gnome and orc. And if you had read the game manual, you'd know that.
I
The camera
Okay.
switches
that one
to
out.
Nasty's lair, and he was coincidentally watching that very same broadcast. Insulted by being called ugly, Nasty uses his magic to transform all of the dragons into crystallized statues. Our hero Spyro must rescue them all and defeat Nasty Nork to save the day. With that out of the way, unless you guys have something else, let's take another break, and when we come back, we'll revisit our memories of Spyro the Dragon. Welcome back, everybody. So we're going to talk about our memories. And unfortunately, I don't really have any memories of this game because I never played it. But I've been aware of Spyro since the game has been promoted so heavily through various gaming magazines and other media outlets back in the day. This is 1998 we're talking about. So me, I'm in 8th grade at this point, and I'm trying to move away from these more quote-unquote kiddie type of games. And I had my eye on Final Fantasy VII, which had come out the year prior, but I'm in 8th grade. If I had the resources and the option between Final Fantasy VII and Spyro, it's Final Fantasy all day.
Wrong answer.
That's just how it is. Final Fantasy VII was just amazing to me. The FMVs in those games were unbelievable. The world building, and it was just a night and day kind of difference between this dark world of Final Fantasy VII and this very lighthearted, kind of bright adventure that is Spyro.
I'm sorry. Did you get to be a dragon in Final Fantasy? No.
But I got to summon dragons.
Boom.
Meh.
Yeah.
Meh.
Yeah. You summon Neo Bahamut and you can destroy the planet.
Can
Can Spyro do that?
fire. He can set bombs off with his flames. It's fine.
He headbutts goats.
Yes. And
Sheep.
supercharge.
But that's enough for me. So I'm going to turn this over to Cory, and I'm going to ask you, was this a game that you owned day one? And did you already own a PlayStation? How'd you get the game? Was it a birthday gift? Just what are some of your memories of Spyro?
We owned a PlayStation pretty close to release. I think one of the first games we had was actually Final Fantasy Tactics. Um,
Excellent game.
yes,
Excellent.
it's excellent and something we won't be playing because Chris will never finish it. Um, but I don't know if we had this when it first came out, but I think it was within like the first 6 months or so. Um, sorry, what was the rest of the question?
Just how you came about it. Was it just a general
Oh,
gift
I
or
think it was just something my parents picked up. It was definitely like, you can look at the box art and it's very kid friendly. So, I had two younger sisters and it's like a happy, whimsical purple dragon. So obviously it was like an easy choice for them to grab. And I do remember some of the commercials on it where like it I think they were like live action and then Spyro would like come in and like set fire to stuff. So like I do remember there was a marketing campaign on top of this. But yeah, it was just this kind of fun thing that we picked up and we did own a copy and it got some pretty good playtime in the house. Honestly, I don't remember anything specific about it. A lot of it to me is the fact that like the visual style of it is very much like really bright and cartoony and just this kind of like happy-go-lucky aura, and you do end up like beating up stuff occasionally, but for the most part it's just kind of like flying and gliding and running around, and like you can like harass butterflies and you have this little dragonfly buddy that follows you around. So it's not really something that has any sort of like specific memory to me. Like I can't remember specific levels. I can't remember like really like big and you know epic fights or anything like that.
So you're
It's just
saying it's
this.
not memorable?
Yeah, well, it's not that it's not memorable. It's just that it's a broad stroke kind of thing. Like if I looked at the game booting it back up again for the first time in like 15, 18 years or whatever it is, and it's immediately recognizable. And I could tell you that, at a glance what it was, like if you showed me a screenshot, it's just that there's nothing like outstanding beyond like the color palette to me, like the visuals. This was kind of like a cross between Donkey Kong and Mario 64. Like where Super Mario 64, you're going through levels and collecting coins. This one, you're going through levels and collecting gems. And, like you have to free all of your dragon buddies that are trapped in these crystals, much like collecting stars or whatever. But the flip side to Mario is like every level had some sort of like little boss fight that you would have to do with like the chain chomps and the piranha plants and everything like that. Where this one, it was more or less just like run around, grab stuff, like try to fly and glide as much as possible and kind of enjoy that whole like time trial aerial aspect of the game, where there's really not a lot of like it's low stakes, I guess would be the biggest thing about it. So that's really like my biggest childhood memories on the subject.
did you have any friends that own this game, or did your sisters or anybody else know anyone else that played this game?
I think my sisters might have known somebody else. I don't know any of my friends that owned it, but it was sort of that thing growing up where like consoles are expensive. So like I was the PlayStation household and my friend Tony had like Xbox and Jamie had the Nintendo 64, and we kind of, like one of us had a Dreamcast. You like depending on what you wanted to play, you kind of went over to somebody else's house really.
That communal effort and
Yeah,
that kind
exactly.
of
Like your parents are saving money and you guys are like doing the whole rideshare program where it's like, let's play Marvel vs. Capcom today and go to Cory's house because he's got the PlayStation.
that kind of leads me to another question I have. Did your parents make you get rid of your older consoles to make room for the new ones?
No, we never got rid of my Genesis. The Nintendo, we had several Nintendos growing up, and I think we had the Super Nintendo at one point. Like, and I don't really remember having it because, like, it was just too early in my childhood to really have any long-lasting memories of that. And then eventually we did get a Super Nintendo for a little while, and then my mother turned around and like gave that to one of her work friends who had like a little child. But like we kept the Genesis and we kept the PlayStation, and then going forward we ended up like just boxing up those consoles and not really doing anything with them. So most of them are still like in my family's attic somewhere.
And that's always exciting, going back and kind of rediscovering stuff that you had before. I did that a few years back, and man, it was a really magical moment kind of going back and seeing some of my older stuff.
Yeah, and like right out of high school, like your first job or whatever, I ended up going to like one of those retro gaming stores and I bought myself a Super Nintendo, and that is like in a one of those plastic totes sitting in my closet here at home too. So like I do have a bunch of the original stuff like Gradius and things like that. So
Oh, we need to talk about that game sometime.
yeah, that's a
But
great one.
For
is there
sure.
anything else that you wanted to talk about with your memories?
No, I mean, like I said, it's Spyro to me is just kind of this whimsical like precursor to the adventure series, and the fact that like it was this big 3D thing and it was very polished and well done. It did really stand out as a kid because up until that point, minus like games on the 64, um, we were really still working kind of in the Genesis era prior to this. So moving up to this one to have like a whole like 3D playground, and it looked a lot cleaner in my opinion than a lot of the stuff you would find on the 64. Like prior to this, I think we had like Smash Bros and like I said Super Mario World and stuff, but Spyro on the PS1 looked really nice in my opinion. So it was this like visually like wild thing.
All good stuff. Chris, what about you? What memories do you have of Spyro?
I was on the same page as you, where when this game came out, my little sister had it, and she played it. She loved it, but I was too busy listening to Korn and playing Tony Hawk, and
Yeah.
probably shopping at Hot Topic. So I was not. I didn't care anything about Spyro at all. But yeah,
So you
so
don't
that's
have any memories of playing with your little sister or
no. I remember. Yeah, I mean, I remember watching her play it and just checking it out and just being disinterested with it right away. So yeah, I remember it being around, and I remember my little sister liking it, and I remember the commercials like Cory was talking about, and them trying to market it as a funny, quirky little guy. But yeah, that's as far as I go. I didn't play it, so yeah.
Sabi, why don't you take us home? What do you remember of Spyro?
A lot. But I first off, I want to jump back to the whole commercial thing because as soon as Cory mentioned it, I was like, oh, I kind of remember that, but vaguely. So I quickly like YouTube it, and now I remember it. It was the sheep, like one of the sheep that Spiral, shoots fire at and stuff. But
Hmm.
so it's like a burnt up sheep that's like looks like a stuffed animal kind of ordeal. So you see it like Chuck E. Cheese almost, and he's trying to like, we gotta team up and not buy this game or something like that, and like it's a funny commercial. If you just YouTube the commercial for it, it's great. This sheep looks creepy. He's all burnt up and he's trying to like it's promoting the Spyro game, but at the same time he's like trying to pretty much say Spyro's not a nice guy because he gets burnt by him and stuff. But it was great. For the most part, sorry. I love
I
this
mean,
game.
the main theme I remember from the commercial is arson. So
It's
Yes.
yeah, pretty much. Yeah, then everyone like rushes the poor sheep over because they want to go buy the PlayStation 1. But no, I love this game a lot. I don't exactly remember when I got my PlayStation 1. I'm sure I had to have been around the time roughly maybe when it came out because I think I was probably 8 or 9 when I started playing, I think.
Oh
Um
wow.
it would make sense cuz like I was born in 90 and this came out what 98.
98.
So
98.
yeah, so I was, I was just a good timing for it for me and the two games I remember owning is Spyro and Crash Bandicoot. That was like my first two games ever. And it's the games I only played forever and ever. But just being able to go back to this, like I was way overexcited to be invited to this podcast for this because I'm a huge Spyro fan. I love it. There's so much about this game I cannot wait to talk about. But as for early childhood games, I lost myself in this game like for a lot of unhealthy hours probably. The fact that you got to be a dragon and I was already like a dragon fanatic and the fact you got to be the dragon and it's like a 3D platform, you could control him, you can run around, charge, jump, blow fire. I was only mildly disappointing in the whole as a kid like the flying mechanics. I will say I skipped like all of those levels. I hated those levels. Like the mechanic was just
Yes,
not
and we're going
for
to talk
me.
about that
Yeah,
more.
sorry. But yeah, like I sunk many hours into this game. It was just my happy place as a kid. Like it really was. I love this game so much. So for me personally, I would have chosen Spyro well over Final Fantasy, but I was also younger, so like Final
Yeah,
Fantasy
I
wasn't
was gonna
my gig
ask.
at the time. So for me it was Spyro all the way.
So you said you were 8 or 9.
Mhm.
Sean and I, we were both right around what, 14, 15
Yeah.
Around that
Oh,
age, because I was born,
when the game came out. Yeah.
yeah, so I was born in 83 at the very, very end, and you were born in 84.
Yeah. Corey, you're also a few years younger, right?
Yeah, so I was about 10 when this came out.
it was funny when you were mentioning about like listening to Korn and playing Tony Hawk. I want to point out I totally was a hard like Korn fan, and I love playing Tony Hawk, but I still chose Spyro that too because I love this
Yeah,
game.
but you weren't in high school.
That's
Like,
fair. That is fair. Yeah, that's all I have for like the childhood part. I have much to say about this game, but the childhood part, like I said, I stuck a lot of time in this game as a kid.
Well, I have some questions for you, if you're
Mhm.
willing to kind of stay here in 1998 with us.
Yes.
You said that you just sunk a ton of time into it. How long did it take you to beat this game? And
You
did you
know,
beat it?
I honestly don't think I was ever able to beat it. Just I wanted to try to like 100% it, and I really struggled with I struggle with things when I'm timed at them. So the flying ones really like my anxiety would be through the roof. But I wanted to get everything because there was so much exploration in this game because of the flying mechanics. So you were able, once you get higher up, and if you can glide somewhere, chances are you're gonna be able to get there. And so just because there was so much exploration in this game, like that's where I mostly sunk a lot of hours into it. Plus, I was also super nerdy, and I would like role play like I'm a dragon and stuff like that. But um, I don't know. There was a lot to see, and you were for the most part for older games like this, you were rewarded for actually exploring, like trying to like what's behind this corner, and there's actually a chest there, and I really enjoy that. I don't think a lot of games really do that too much anymore, as much as they did as these games first came out. Because I think like in Mario, if you're gonna take the time to explore everything, usually they reward you for it, and that was awesome. So like I like playing when I play through these games, I want to see every nook and cranny of these games. And I think that's also what took a long time for me to get through it. Because there was a lot of like open world itself. And then on top of that, going into these levels, there was a whole bunch of extra more to explore within that level, let alone world. It was great.
And I
I
think especially with that age group, sorry, Corey, I got a quick comment. And I think especially with that age group, that kind of set a kind of formative mindset about doing that exploration where you want to just check literally everything in a game.
hmm And it did. That got me good. Like I needed to know. I needed to look and find everywhere. Like find all the gems, find all the dragons, murder those egg guys. Yeah.
Yeah, I will say that this game not only has a 120% completion achievement to it, or like whatever you want to call it,
Mhm.
um, but the very first level, as you're talking about, like to get one of the like to unfreeze one of the guys from their statue, you have to like glide from this height, and it's kind of around a blind corner, and then you have to kind of climb up, and it looks like it's a piece of scenery almost, and you might even think that, except there's like a one of those little egg thieves up there that's kind of going nee 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 nee
Mhm.
laughing at you. And I think that's really like one of the only keys that you can actually get up there. But when you get up there and chase him around the bend, like that's how you get into the back door section on the first level to like unlock that statue for like your frozen friend or whatever on that first zone. So yeah, like even on like 1-1 or whatever, like you're already having to like kind of sneak around and kind of shove yourself against every wall and try to cheese like every kind of exploit in terms of exploration to get like 100% on it.
I swear they like really try to squeeze in as much puzzles flying wise as they could. Like you had to be really like you said, squeeze and tight cord. You had to really make that flight like perfect, otherwise you weren't going to get it. But it was a crucial area that you needed to get to. Like puzzles like that in the games at some points frustrated me because I think within the first Spyro there was not much mercy for that. Like if you missed, you missed and you
Oh
fall the
yeah,
way
you had to
down.
go back to like square one. I mean, even when you're chasing the egg guy up top,
Oh
like
yeah.
if you don't get up, if you don't like catch up with him or whatever, you end
Mhm.
up like having to fall off the side and go right back to make that blind jump again,
Yep.
which is
And they
just like, oh my god.
yeah, and they purposely would lead you off like a cliff and stuff to make you
Yeah,
fall, and then you
exactly.
have to go like backtrack all the way to the beginning and find where you originally got him and restart the whole thing and pray that you got him the second time.
Did either of you ever play the sequels to this game?
Yes.
I played Ripto's Rage or whatever it was, the second
Yeah.
one.
It's Ripto's
But
Rage and then Year of the Dragon.
Mhm.
Can
yeah,
one
but
of you tell me
after
which one has the skateboard in it?
dude, I couldn't tell you.
Um.
It's probably Ripto's Rage because that sounds it's harsh. Yeah, but no, like after the second one, the whole concept to me started getting a little stale. And honestly, Insomniac made other games which I found more entertaining, so I ended up playing those instead.
It was Year of the Dragon for the skateboarding.
Okay, there you go.
The third one?
Yes, because the second one introduced climbing and
Ooh.
swimming, and that was
You
a big
remember the
thing.
swimming?
Like that was a big thing.
Yeah, because in the first one, like water
You
hazards
can't
just
swim.
straight kill you, right?
It just because you sink like a rock easily. It's probably like goo. You feel like as soon as like Spyro hit anything that related to liquid, he'll just be like, and he just like weasels out and just sinks into the
Sad
water.
little dragon dead noise.
Yep, he couldn't. There was no swimming in that game, let alone climbing. Like in this, I remember specifically in the second one, if you clipped the edge of like gliding, Spyro would grab on and you can like get on it. But if you clipped anything in the first one, you just fell down. Like that was it. There was no. Another thing I hated like during gliding is that the second one, if you were gliding and you hit the button like the A button again, you would like flutter your wings and get like a little tiny boost up more and then land. While the first one, if you wanted to stop gliding, you would just drop, like just straight up drop straight down where you hit it. And that killed me many, 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 many times.
I just checked out that commercial that you're talking about with the sheep.
Yeah.
I can't tell. Is that a costume? Because it looks really,
yeah.
really good. If it's actually 3D imaging, I can't tell. But it's super weird. You have these
Yeah.
two guys that are, one of them's a little obese, and he's like licking his lips, and he has a fork, and he actually stabs this anthropomorphic sheep that's talking. It's one of those. It makes sense. It's the 90s. Nintendo had its Play It Loud series. I think that PlayStation was also Sony was also trying to do like their kind of extreme stuff too.
Yeah.
And I think really
They're
was kind
edgy.
of I think Crash Bandicoot was more of the edgy mascot. But this is definitely something weird. Like Sabi said, go ahead and check out that commercial.
It looks like a Chuck E. Cheese animatronic
It
type
does
ordeal.
Yes.
scarily look like one of the Chuck E. Cheese singers is about to murder you. But no, back to what I was saying though about Insomniac. They ended up creating the Ratchet and Clank series afterwards, which is a much better title in my opinion. So
Those are pretty decent.
and
I'm
they
gonna
have
have to
better
agree.
guns. Up your arsenal, great game.
Yeah, just about all of their titles were puns that
It was what,
probably
Going
wouldn't have.
Commando.
Yeah.
Yeah. A lot of those probably wouldn't have passed for today. But, I say that, but then you have like South Park.
I was gonna say, yeah.
It all depends on who your
Publisher.
is. Yeah.
That's a real good point. Does anybody else have anything they want to talk about before we go into today's replay?
You mentioned about the sequels. Does this mean there's going to be a future podcast of the sequels? Because
Probably not.
oh my heart.
Listen, this might be the biggest one we have, and we'll have to do them.
I'm just saying you should really make a comment if you want more, because I will definitely be up to talking about it. I love these games so much. I play the
Sabi
crap out
will
of
be
all
here.
three of them.
She'll
I
have
will
charts.
be here. Yep. I love these games a lot. So yeah, just
Well,
saying.
kind of depending on how successful this episode
That's
is,
fair.
and if there are people that want to play it. And also, I kind of mentioned this last time during the Pokemon Yellow episode. I wasn't able to get one of my buddies on the main show, so I was able to talk to him separately. But that's a possibility that if these guys don't want to play, I might just suck it up, play through
I'll
the
play
sequels.
anything.
Well, there we go. So
Yeah, it
it's
doesn't mean Chris will finish it, but
Yeah.
so odds are that it's kind of looking more and more in your favor if you want to talk about these sequels. And that's something I was going to discuss later on. But I mean, we could kind of mention it here and kind of segue. We'll be taking an audio break, but we could kind of segue into the replay for today. I was probably not going to play these sequels unless there was like somebody really gunning for me to like, hey, put some time into it.
Hey, if there is people out there, I will gladly talk about it. But if not, I get it. I know I just happen
Same.
to be like a fanatic about these games, so I can understand when people are not. So
That's kind of how I feel about Zelda. I have been bugging these guys about like, let's get a time nailed down for Ocarina of Time and let's get a time nailed down for Link's Awakening because I cannot wait to talk about those games.
those are good ones.
Those are great ones.
I
Show some
played
respect. That is,
Ocarina. Oh yeah, definitely.
Those are amazing. Yeah.
okay.
Back
oh,
to Spyro.
okay, yeah. Coming back to Spyro before I stretch out and start fighting Cory here. All right, so
Fighting me about what?
it sounded like you didn't think those were good games.
No,
I
those
heard
are
some
fine
fighting
under your
games.
breath.
Just you're like, let's go. We're gonna do it. Like
I heard
I've-
some
no one's
grumbling
given
back
me
there.
a thing.
Say what?
No one's given me any notice about setting up a schedule.
Oh my God. I talk about it all the time in the Discord.
I don't read.
Oh my word. Okay, back to Spyro. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we're going to discuss our impressions of playing Spyro today. All right, welcome back, everybody. We're going to talk about what it was like replaying Spyro in 2023. Chris, why don't you start us off and tell us about your playthrough?
Sure. I played I did not have access to a PlayStation copy original, so I got the remastered. Is that what it's called? Yeah, the trilogy remastered.
The Reignited
Reignited.
trilogy.
Yes, which they did a fantastic job with, by the way.
Yes.
It's very clean. It did very much remind me of playing classic Spyro. Even though, like I said, I didn't play much, but the trilogy was a very true remaster, and I didn't play it much, but for me, like it just kind of I don't know the best way to put this. It didn't the game didn't really do it for me. I mean, it was very nice, very colorful, pretty little pretty stages and all that good stuff. But to me, it just comes off as a simple game. It's good for kids, but yeah,
Did you play this game with your son?
yes, yeah, and yeah, I should add, yeah, Gibson actually likes it quite a bit, and it was good for him. It is a perfect introduction to platformers, and that's one of my I don't know, compliments and critiques. I mean, it doesn't have the complexity that old Mario games had. You know, like our introduction to platformers to me seemed much harder,
Rage
especially
games.
on Nintendo and Super Nintendo. Whereas this is super beginner friendly,
Yeah.
and
Very
there's
floaty.
not. Yeah. There's the difficulty curve is very low. Um, the world is very nice and bright and colorful and cartoony and alive, and it's very fun. And Gibbs loved all that. He loved seeing all the different what do you even call them? The worlds where you take the balloon from one to another
Zones, whatever you want to
zones.
say.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. He got a kick out of them. He especially got a kick out of the Bayou one.
Yes.
But I will say I did not beat it. But one thing I did find myself being stuck with, and I didn't really want to beat it, but I did find myself being hooked on 100%ing each level. And as
Oh
I was going,
no.
yeah, if I could, I mean, because I don't know how to describe it, but like it just to me, like I saw it was there. I saw the gems because each level tells you exactly how many gems are left
Mhm.
and how many dragon statues are found.
Mhm.
So you know exactly what you need to do, and you're like, oh wait, okay, there's 30 gems missing. There's a hidden spot somewhere. And I found myself, even against my own will, going back and running around looking for those
Yeah, because now
missing
it's
gems.
personal.
Well, and kind of just to jump in here and kind of expand on that, Chris, that's more or less the way I also played this. Is like I'd boot it up for 20 minutes, a half hour to crack, and I would just kind of play around and explore the zone. And I think that's really more or less like the intended method of playing this game,
Mhm.
because like it really is about like all the treasure and all the little secrets and all the nooks
Yeah,
and crannies. Like there's not as we said in the childhood playthrough, like there's not really like a lot of villains or anything you have to fight. There's little
yeah,
monsters that you can run into and can stun you and everything, but for the most part, like you're this big purple dragon and you breathe fire and you can glide
you're
around
a
the map
tiny purple
and
dragon.
I was
yeah,
gonna say you're
whatever.
tiny purple dragon.
But
You're the smallest.
you're a purple dragon that breathes fire, like the little
Yeah.
like pigmen or whatever are not a threat to you.
Yeah,
So, for me, it was more or less just about like, booting up the game and kind of exploring around for, a half hour to crack and then just setting it down. And
yeah,
I
and
really
that
had
is
no like big investment in it.
right. And
I
I mean, to me, that felt like the perfect way of playing him because I found myself because I was trying to beat it, and if I found myself getting frustrated if I was playing this for at least like an hour at a time. I was like, why am I doing this? Like little snippets are perfect.
I think Corey, you said it best earlier when you said that there weren't really big stakes to this game. And
Yeah,
even though you have this big bad nasty Nork that you're trying to fight against, the world doesn't really convey that. Whereas some other games, there's like this oppressing atmosphere to the world itself, but you're just kind of running around and doing stuff.
Yeah,
right. And I mean, like, as I said, there's nothing that's really threatening you. So even though like all your friends are stuck in crystal prisons or whatever, like it doesn't really feel that way. Because all you have to do is just like run up and tap them, and they're like, "Oh, hey, thanks for letting me out there, bud. Like, let's get on with it." And then
yeah,
you just kind of go about your business, and it's like, "How do I get up there? What's this? Where did this go?" Like you're really not like in any sort of pressing like race against the clock. The moon's not falling if you want to go back to Zelda. Like there's no like hordes of undead or anything. Like it's a very childish kind of friendly, fun, adventurous like exploration game, and that's really kind of the crux of it.
I
and
was
one thing
just about to say that. Go ahead, Chris. Go ahead.
oh no, I was gonna say one thing I did find myself doing was just not caring at all if I died 19 times in a row trying to fly to a certain secret spot or something because there was no like I didn't feel the need to hang on to every life, and I wasn't stockpiling extra lives or stockpiling
Well,
anything.
it's
Like,
just easy to get them too, the little
yeah,
statues whenever you break open a chest or something.
yeah, and defeating enemies that you've already defeated like refills your extra lives
Right.
fairly quickly, and I didn't look at the options. Was there an easy, hard setting, or is it just one? Okay, so yeah, I think this game is just made to be a fun, light game that is a perfect introduction to platforming.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
I mean,
Cory, you
sorry.
mentioned it. It was like you said that it was all about exploration, and I think that's
Right.
really the key to the game. The game isn't a narrative; it's just about that kind of, like I said earlier, it was something kind of new at that time where they had a character that could glide. They were doing 3D platforming. You now had more open-ended worlds
Yeah,
and
you had
open-ended
true
levels.
3D as well. You didn't have any like
Yeah,
forced perspective. Like you actually had,
Yeah.
mesh models and a plane and everything else.
exactly. Cory, what about you? You've been kind of adding input here, but what were some of your experiences replaying it today?
I also played the remastered or reignited or whatever, and I will say like one of the biggest things that I recognized about it is so as a kid I thought it looked good. The remastered version makes the original game look like garbage. Like
Oh,
they
it's
really put a bunch of effort into making this like a really gorgeous environment, and they did an amazing job.
they
I will
really did.
say that like because it is like just this game centered around like exploration and looking at things, the fact that they made it so engaging and beautiful is like really a testament to like I think how the game is meant to be played, really.
One thing when I was playing it, and Corey, you currently still play World of Warcraft, right?
Yeah.
One thing that this game kept reminding me of, like the whole cartoony worldness of it, it just kind of kept reminding me of World of Warcraft.
Yeah,
Like
that's
the
fair. And I mean,
buildings and
yeah,
yeah.
and it's very much like high fantasy. Like there's castles
Hmm.
and stuff everywhere, and torchlight and magic and all sorts of things of that nature. And it's just this fun, friendly, like beautiful environment.
Okay, I'm gonna chip in here for a minute.
Yeah,
Um, the reignited one, I didn't play fully through that. I I literally just watched the entire old-fashioned original version of it, and I noticed like right away because I literally paid maybe 15 minutes of the remastered one, and what I noticed right away is that okay, first off, yes, it is drop dead gorgeous, and I'm so happy that they didn't change anything major of the characters. They just glossed them up in like the perfect way, which made me very happy.
They made them less
Um,
pointy.
yes, less polygony.
Well, yeah, not only that, but
But
like everybody's got details. Like, guys have like
Yes.
yes,
little glasses and, books
it's
in their hands and
amazing.
things like that. Like,
And
just all the accoutrement was really just upscaled.
it looks great, but there is some differences in the sense of like the first 10 minutes of me playing, just being in the open world in the original, just starting out, you just get in the game in the artisans area, and first off, I noticed in the reignited, there's a door directly behind you when you first load in that game and just started playing. There's a crystallized dragon right in front of you that you free, but then if you turn around on only the reignited version, there's a door there. I don't know what it led to because it was locked. In the original one, there's no door there. So I'm not sure what that door is supposed to be, and I never figured it out yet. Another thing is, I feel in the Reignited, they made some of the puzzles, even though they weren't crazy to begin with, they still made it much more like, I am here, like very strong. Because right in the beginning of the Artisan's Guild, and again, when you first start the game, if you just look to your left, there's a little waterfall and a tiny, like, little, I don't know what you want to call it, just a water fountain looking
There's
thing
a
that the
nook.
waterfall kind of goes into. And there is one, two, three, four, five. There's five like circular platforms there, and the original, they don't look anything fancy. They're just like circular flat rocks. And in the reignited version, they're much more fancier, like I should step on these type platforms. And when you do and you light them all up, it unlocks like a level, a secret level, which I'm pretty sure was like a flying level. I'm not sure. But in the original game, you didn't have that. You really just had to guess. I actually didn't realize until like a good way chunk in the game way later, one of the dragons that you free that's been crystallized actually like goes back and talks about that. He's like, you should go back in the Artisan Guild. There's something really special going on, like by the waterfall. He mentions the waterfall
Hmm.
and the fact that it's a puzzle. And I was like, why are you telling me this like two worlds in? But like I already figured it out, but still it was just crazy that he even like went back and talked about it. Most of the times when you free these dragons, it's usually like some of it is a lot of it is like the same
Is relevant.
dialogue. It'll be like, "Thanks for freeing me,"
A
and then
generic like, thanks, Spyro. Like it's
yep,
just the same line for
and
40
then some of
guys.
it will be like actually tell you something interesting, and then I don't know if you caught like the joke through, but the more like dragons you save, you'll keep coming across in the occasional like old grandpa like dragon, and he'll be like,
Yeah.
"Well, thank you, Spyro. This reminds me," and then Spyro's like, "Oh my God, just we're good. We just leave."
Yeah, they give you the whole
And
like I'm
he gets
sassy Spyro thing.
yeah, he gets
Yeah.
so like he's like, "Please, like, oh, gotta go. Oh, look at that. I got stuff to do." It was just really funny. But sorry, I just want to say there is some differences between like the brand spanking new like reignited version versus the old one. I feel like the reignited just kind of made, and maybe it's just a sense because it was more detailed. But again, I still know what's behind that door in the beginning, and just kind of feel like it was very like laid out. Like this is it, here it is. Again, much easier for youngins to get involved. Like a 5-year-old probably pick up on it real quick. But yeah, it is drop dead gorgeous. The reignited is drop dead gorgeous, but I still will always have love for like the original just because I played that a lot when it came out as a kid. And but it is really, really great if you want like your kids to first start up on something like this. Like Spyro Reignited is definitely a good one to start with.
Yeah. And to throw back to the original, because I did go back and watch a YouTube playthrough of the original.
Mhm.
For early, well, I don't know if that was considered early PlayStation or not, but those graphics were great. Like,
It's
I mean,
very
I loved it.
PlayStation, I think.
yeah,
That was like the biggest like sell for me was because like how for at the time, Spyro looked so real. Like he looked so good. And like that was like one of the biggest things for me, like where I had to have this game. I needed it in my life because like yeah, like I said at the time, like it looked great. It looked amazing. Like that was top-notch graphics that I've ever seen as a kid. So like it was super exciting. And again, now to look at it again through Reignited, it almost is like, so that's what he's supposed to look like. Because going through some of these photos now, as I'm kind of like browsing Google, like it was like, oh, that's definitely not what he looked like in the game I was playing.
see,
Like the original, like they look
and I've got,
nothing like it.
I have that weird phenomenon where like when I remember old games, I remember them like as if they were in HD graphics,
Yes.
and and I don't remember Spyro looking that bad. And then when I actually watched the YouTube video on it, I'm like, oh wow, yeah, that is pretty rough.
Yeah, it's crazy because like I love his little if you compared now, like he has like duck feet. He has like the flattest little duck feet ever.
Mm-hmm.
And but still like that's what I'm saying. Like when they did like the reunited, the graphics look amazing.
But
They
that's
did
what
really
I'm
good
saying. Like
on it.
when I boot up the reignited, because I played that first before going back and watching the old ones. I booted up. I'm like, oh yeah, this is just how I remember it. And then I went back and
Mhm.
watched the YouTube video. I was like, oh, I don't remember it looking this bad.
Yeah.
Especially even just all the little details, like
Mhm.
the reignited version has like actual like flowers and stuff in the grass, and you can see individual
Yes.
things, and then you like look at the original game and it's like, oh, that's just like a flat green plane with a
Yep.
couple little like
Yeah,
color
it's just a
palette
texture.
variances.
Yep. And it's crazy how much that's changed. But again, that's what makes the reignited even like but also makes it appealing to like the now children generation because they
Oh
you
yeah,
can't just throw them back into that
Exactly.
kind of stuff. They're gonna be like, oh, that looks real rough.
yeah, if for someone, especially what's like $40 for like all three games or whatever,
Mhm.
like if you're trying to market this, like they did a really great job to
Mhm.
put it towards like a newer demographic.
Yeah, I agree. And some of the stuff like that's changed through the Spyro games is I think within the first when they made the second one, there was a lot of improvements, I feel, in the sense of during the first game, how you mentioned that like there's no bosses and like no main stuff. There actually is a boss in each world, but
Oh
you
yeah,
don't
yeah.
realize like but it's like
They're
it
just
never
a
felt
bigger,
like it was a boss.
yeah,
It just felt like, oh,
a
that's just a
bigger.
weird thing that was random
Well,
in
yeah,
here.
and there's like no cutscenes. There's no,
Not really, no.
there's no like health bars
It
or
didn't
anything, so you really
feel
don't
like a
understand.
boss.
Yeah, right.
Like
Yeah.
in I think an artisan's world, there is the boss Toasty, and that is the sheep that is on stilts that is wearing a pumpkin head and has like a scythe that he tries to cut you with, and he's like running around. He's just running around in sections, and there's all
Yeah.
these like sheep and stuff. But like Toasty was a boss, and I didn't even like realize it.
But you can like accidentally run into it and just kill him without
Yeah.
realizing like he's
Yeah.
really a threat to you, you know?
Yeah, and you're like, oh, he's a bad guy. I thought he was just, it's funny. And some of them, like I said, I think most of the bosses you didn't realize. The only like no guy you knew was a boss was Nasty Nork, versus like again like and Peacekeeper's boss was Dr. Shemp. Didn't realize he was a boss. He was just this big guy in metal armor, because like then that's Peacekeepers like introduced like the metal armor, like, oh, you can't just blow them with fire. Metal somehow reflects that. And I think he just like would smack you with his staff, and you had to like blow fire in his butt, and then he'd like run around, and you had to go like chase him and stuff across these bridges. And then Magic Crafters had I think he was called Blowhard. I think that was it was like he was like a tornado or something. And then Metalhead, that was the big like big Nork that was like all covered in metal. And you had to do something with electricity to bring him down. The only
Well,
weird
wasn't he the one in the? He had like the suit of armor that was kind of like
Yes.
the big robot from Labyrinth.
Yeah, pretty much. And you had to like do something about like the electricity to help bring him down. I think
Yeah.
the only most like weird, I guess the only like weird one that really stood out with and I could be butchering his name, was like Jaquise or something. He was a
Jacuzzi.
weird, yeah. He was in Dreamweavers, and that was where it introduced you to like the little fairies, but not the good fairies, the bad ones, like the little jokesters, imps, jester guys. And his body is actually like a jack-in-a-box. I don't know if you noticed, but he's got a big old jester head, and
I didn't make it
his
that far.
body is a jack-in-a-box, and his legs is actually just like a spiral metal spring that he bounces on. And he was the creepy one. And then after that, then you would finally reach Nasty Nork's world. But I really don't know how to say his name, but he was like the only one like really freaked me
Jacqueline.
out. Yeah, like he was freaky because he also had giant like fairy wings, and again his body was like in the jack-in-a-box, and he just had springs. He just had a spring for a leg, so he would just keep bouncing around because he was insane.
I'm so glad that you took such detailed notes, and I can actually hear you flipping through pieces of paper
Oh,
in the
sorry.
background. No, that's fine, because we'll go through some of these games, and other games I will take like really detailed, intricate notes and everything, and really dive into it. Like on Contra, I went and looked up all the boss names, and they're ridiculous. And Cory was like, "You're making this up."
Chris
They have
and I
names.
just show up. That's what we do.
And this game, I did not really take any notes about the game. I just took notes about how I felt about it. And I have a question for you, Sabi, and you, Cory, and Chris too, because I never played this game as a kid. So I also played the Reignited remaster on Switch, and it didn't have any noticeable frame rate issues. And for those of you that did play it on the PlayStation, how well did it run, if you can remember? Were there any frame rate issues, bad loading times, anything like that?
I don't remember any problems with it.
Mm-mm.
And I think part of that is
Same.
because there's just not much going on. As we said,
And
like it's a lot of visuals and exploration and stuff, but there's not really like a lot of moving objects or like monsters or anything. So I don't think there's really a lot to be loaded.
Yeah,
And
no,
one thing
I
I
had zero
actually-
issues. Sorry.
One thing I do remember, and I took note of it, is like compared to Tony Hawk, which was like my main PlayStation game. Tony Hawk, you could barely load in. You couldn't see 30 feet in front of you because the world didn't load in. Whereas this game was very smooth, and you could actually you could see distance, and you can see the horizon and stuff in this game, even on PlayStation 1, which I thought was noteworthy at the time.
Well, one of the things I mentioned earlier was that they had designed an engine
Right.
that would swap out models, for more detailed textures as you got closer. And that's part of the reason I ask. And for anybody listening, after rescuing your dragon companions, they're replaced with a fairy. And maybe it was explained in a story element that I missed. I don't know. But my first thought was, this is really weird and doesn't make any sense. But then I try to think about it from a developer kind of standpoint. And my assumption is that the fairy models were significantly lower in the polygon count, and that by swapping out those models, they could possibly improve the frame rate, which makes sense when you think about it. If the engine had been designed to swap out models on the fly, you would have the more detailed dragons as you're speaking to them. And then after that, you'd have the lower polygonal count
I mean, that's
that is the
probably
fairy.
completely accurate.
I can see that because mostly after the fairies would appear, like they were just more like save points, and you could replay the dragon scene. But then that it was
Mhm.
just like a quick save point because I'm pretty sure like they would like zap you with their wand if you when you got at least in
When
the
you go by,
original.
they give you the Tinkerbell treatment and do the
Pretty
little
much. Yeah, and it was like a
fairy
little
wand.
save thing.
Yeah.
So I guess I'm just going to kind of jump in here and talk about some of my experience. And like I said, I didn't write down much about the actual gameplay. Mostly wrote down my thoughts. And I think that the levels look great, even though they're fairly simplistic in design, but they serve their purpose, with each world getting progressively more difficult. And even still, they never got to the point that I would consider it a real challenge, except for the flying levels.
Ugh.
Those were hard as shit.
Yeah.
And for those
I didn't
listening,
even bother.
every world has one level in it where Spyro has unlimited flight. He's not gliding, he's actually flying. And as you are moving around, you have to perform certain tasks like collecting jewels or destroying enemies, and it would add time to your timer.
Going through gates.
Going through gates. Yeah, some of the, kind of stereotypical things that you do in a flying sim.
Yeah.
And with that, you just kind of were building up your jewel count, which comes into question later, or it comes into play later, because there is a guy that will transport you from world to world in his balloon, but he has certain objectives that he wants you to meet first,
Mhm.
whether it's obtaining so many eggs or finding so many jewels or rescuing so many dragons. You may need to go back and experience those levels and just try to grind them out for the jewels that are inside of them.
Yeah, and that made it very frustrating at times because they'd be like, I cannot find these gems or I cannot find these dragons and I can't kill the stupid egg guy. That part made it frustrating, but the flying levels is what killed the game for me. Like, not killed it for me, but it made me so mad because like the only thing I felt was missing in this game was Spyro flying. I was like, why can't I fly? I have these wings. And then you finally get the flying and it's like
I
interpreted
hate
the
this.
worst way possible because not only you
Yeah.
have to fly through hoops, shoot down planes, catch little guys in the trains and blow them up, and just do all sorts of stuff. You had to like collect maybe 4 or 5 uh chunks of things. Like it maybe it was like 6 planes you have to kill, and then you get like a +2, and you're all timed for this. And the idea was like you have to get them all in one flight simulation, and that made me my anxiety through the roof. It made me so mad because I'd be like, it would take me the entire time just to get one thing done, which would be like fly through the hoops. Because again, if you even like got too close to the wall, it acted like you flew straight into that wall, and then you
Yeah.
would fall into the water where you can't swim, and you would just instant die, and then you have to redo the entire thing
redo the whole thing,
again.
yeah.
Oh, it made me so mad because a lot of it was me like bumping into walls, like very like vaguely. I would barely touch it, but again, I'd be like, and then you just fall straight down, like you clomp it, fall, and then you're dead.
No.
And if you, yeah,
Oh, sorry. I was
I don't
just
know.
gonna say at the end of the game, does it matter if you actually 100% of these flight simulators?
If you wanted the gems,
You
I
wanted the cool
If
kids.
if you wanted the 120%.
I think you needed
Yes.
to do that, yes, because it's still interpreted as like you're collecting gems, and that's what you needed in order to unlock the secret ending. If you didn't get all that stuff, which included
Yeah, you
the
had to
crappy
do
flight
all.
levels.
I think the worst thing about Spyro like flight portion is that we all wanted to fly as Spyro. We just didn't want to be
Forced.
restricted in our flight.
Yeah.
Yeah, like because every flying thing is like it's a level, it's an arena, like you have to do some certain objective and you're always timed on them. So it's like you
Mhm.
never getting to enjoy just flying around these big
Yep.
gorgeous levels that
You
they made.
finally
Stressful.
have unlimited flight,
Yeah, like
but it's very limited.
you're stuck in this thing where it's like, oh, I'm on a race course, or like I'm having to,
Yep.
catch fireflies or whatever. It's like I just want to fly around this cool zone you made. Like, let me just go explore it. Like, no, you got to do this bit first.
Exactly. Like you didn't even get to like enjoy what they did for the level just artistically. Like you couldn't just like, oh, this is like I guess you could, but you only have 2 minutes to do it before your time's up because you didn't go around
Yeah,
killing things
if
to
you
get more
wanted to just
time.
completely fail the challenge every time, just
Y-
explore for a minute.
Yep.
I
And it just
actually did that on the second one.
sometimes you had to just to know what the course was, because then you have to sit there when as soon as you're thrown into the level, you got to have a game plan. And you cannot miss a beat with that game plan, because as soon as
Yeah.
you do, every second counts. So when you kill that train and blow it up, yeah, I got 2 seconds, cool, you got to get to that next train, and every second count. And it made it so frustrating. It made it significantly less fun for me, and that's like a major reason why I didn't like 100% the game, because I refused to do those flight levels if I could. Like I hated them. I hated them so much because again, they finally give you that flying, but by putting all this other crap behind it, where again you were restricted with everything about it. Oh, it made me
I-
so mad.
I think Sean and I said that we both had the same mentality. Like
Yeah.
as
Yeah,
soon as
for
we figured
sure.
out a level, as soon as we figured out the level was one of those flight levels, we just skipped it.
Yep.
Yeah, I would
There was no point.
immediately try to dunk myself in the water and then I would just go to the
Mhm.
next world. And something you mentioned a second ago about you would just kind of graze, and not even graze, but even getting close to the wall. And I think that's part of the collision detection from the early PlayStation games.
Yeah.
Which is just something that is just there's no
Yeah.
real way to deal with it. But outside of those flying levels, I feel that the worlds themselves were pretty interesting and varied, although the enemies in each area more or less became reskins of previous enemies.
Yes, but like in every world you went to, the enemies kept getting some sort of upgrade. And because again, the first one, everything you just flame everything down, mow the lawn, it was really easy. By the time you get to the second world, it introduces the metals, which was just some sort of metal. But first it was like metal suit. And then another one was, oh, now they have metal shields. And then by the time you reach Beats Makers, which is like the Bayou level, they have that's when they introduce the electric prods and the metal floors. So that what they would do is they took these prods, touched the floor, and the entire floor is electric. And so like each world added a new element of surprise, kind of like how to deal with the situation. Like
One
who
thing
would have
Yeah.
that
thought that?
bothered me is whenever the ones wearing metal armor, whenever you blast them with fire, you see the metal getting red hot,
Yes.
and somehow that does not hurt the
That
enemy.
always cracked me up because I always thought of like D&D, like any person that's wearing full plate armor, I'm just like, oh, heat metal, because that kills you. Like you're
Yeah.
gonna die from it. But in this world, metal reflects fire and it doesn't matter.
Well, you're right that every new world did add some type of mechanic that kind of changed how you had to play these games.
Hmm.
I still feel that they were all fairly basic, and that comes with the nature of the game itself. Like I said
Yeah.
earlier in the history, they were trying to market to a younger audience, and you being that 8 or 9 years old at that time frame, you were probably the key demographic that they were going for,
And they got me.
and they got you. So the worlds I thought were pretty good. I feel that the music overall was really well done, and
Yes.
it was pleasant and matched the gameplay without being overpowering.
Yeah.
It is super 90s
Some of it,
though.
some of it fit. Yeah, yeah. Some of it did fit like what was going on in that scenery. Such a jumping back to Toasty. You guys probably don't remember it, but Toasty actually had like a very, I think, a song to itself, and I can hear it in my head. And that level terrified me as a kid. It was like the most spookiest level for me because that one introduced the dogs. And if you look at the dogs from the original Spyro to the reignited, they look way friendlier and reignited. We're like, oh, it's a dog. Like, okay. Versus the freaking PlayStation 1, it looked terrifying. Like, it reminded me of like a Resident Evil dog. It looks so freaky
Oh.
because then they would like get up and bark and then they jump up in the air. You cannot see them and then just come down on you and flatten you. And it was so jump scary for me and I don't know why, but like I hated that level because there was so many dogs. Like it was you had like the little sheep herder guys, I think, or whatever they were, and their dog next to them. And if you got too close, they'll like jump up and like bark bark and they leap in the air and then try to smush you, and it was terrifying. But again, the song, I'm pretty sure Toasty had like its own like song to itself for that level. And it sometimes like again, I mentioned earlier, like core memory, some of these songs like it's like, oh, I know what that is from. Just like the flight levels, I'll know those songs and I hate those ones because flight levels always made me mad.
Oh my god, I just googled the original dogs and yeah, you weren't kidding. Those things are
Terrifying. They're so scary. But
weird,
especially as like an
crooked
8-year old,
eyes.
like that level, like that one's it was freaky. It was really freaky.
We talked about this a little bit off the air, but we're talking about sparks. So Spyro has a dragonfly companion that acts as your health meter. And I thought this was a fantastic decision on the part of the developers because I
Yes.
love seeing HUDs incorporated into the character design. And probably my favorite out of all of gaming is in Dead Space, which just had a remake, by the way. I'm replaying through that right now. Isaac's health bar is integrated into his engineering suit. And it just is such a very slight way of kind of keeping you into this world.
Yes. It's fantastic. That was a great way that they put it here. Like again, just like how they did in Spyro. I don't think really a whole bunch of others off the top of my head at that time like really did that, and it was just it was really different and it was really fun because Sparks, if he's golden, you got 3 hits you can take or two or something, and if you got hit again then he would turn blue, if you got hit again green, and if you got hit again you will lose Sparks. So it's, yeah, you can take like what, 3 hits then. And but you also don't realize how much Sparks like really affects you in gameplay when you don't have him, because Sparks is the one that goes running around collecting the gems for you as soon as you get in within like a certain proximity.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't realize it until you don't have him, that like oh, I can't just rush past this. I need to actually run into it with my body. Otherwise, you don't get the gem. And it doesn't sound like it's a bad thing, but when you're just trying to like rush around, get things, or you're being attacked and stuff, like it became much more like, oh crap, it really sucks not having Sparks with me because he just would have grabbed it versus like now I have to go run specifically and almost on pinpoint to get this gem rather than Sparks just going zip, 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 and then getting it for you. I also learned that in Reignited, I don't think it did it in the original PlayStation, but if you clicked in your uh let's see, LS key, um Sparks would point you to the closest treasure. And either it be a gem
Really?
or
What?
you didn't know that? Like
Oh,
if you clicked in the button, he'll be like zoop, and then he'll like point like a little dog into the closest
Oh yeah,
either
I think
gem
yeah.
or
I
key or something significant. He would
and
like
I
compass you to it.
I completely forgot about that.
And it's just something like you don't think about unless you think of like Sparks as like an actual like little separate character. He actually does a few things in the game, let alone being your health bar and pointing out the gens for you and then collecting the gens for you. Again, it doesn't seem like it's a big deal until you don't have them. Then you realize like, oh, it sucks like to have to go get it yourself.
and one
Sorry.
more thing I want to talk about with Sparks, and I think Cory was going to mention this earlier. There's little creatures that can kind of roam the world,
Yes.
and you can blast them with your fire, and they will turn into, or they can be eaten by Sparks. I guess they're eaten by him,
Yes.
Mhm.
and that will recharge your health bar.
Why do they turn into butterflies?
Oh, that's what it is. You kill them and they turn into butterflies, and then
Uh-huh.
he eats them as a dragonfly.
Yeah.
I have no idea. And but Chris, that may be going back to that concept about they're trying to save frame rate by making something very simple, because a butterfly can just be, a couple of
Anything.
triangles
Yeah.
Yeah.
on an early
That's fair.
PlayStation. So
And it fits the
again,
theme as well, being this, whimsical thing.
yeah, good point.
It reminds
I
me
would
of Sonic.
I would accidentally blast all of these creatures,
Oh yeah.
and I didn't realize it for a while that they were my health bar, especially
Mhm.
in the early world, until I had gone back and I read the manual and I was like, oh, okay,
Like, oh,
I get
those
it
are
now.
my health potions. I need to save those.
Yeah, but you can accidentally like waste them all because some of them aren't put in very great areas.
No, they'll like to put them like next to enemies, or the enemy likes to run near them, and you're like,
Yeah,
well, great. Now I have to carefully murder you. And each world and sometime each level had like their own specific food for Sparks. Either it be such as Dark Hollow, which is still like one of the beginner ones, they were frogs. And then sometimes when you keep skipping around worlds, they could be like really weird looking. I think Beastmakers had like the pink chicken, which it looks way different than it does in Reignited, and the Reignited just looks like a spotted hen, versus the original looks like a bald pink chicken with like one leg. It looked really really goofy, but that was Sparks' food. And again, like in each world pretty much had like their own little critter of some
Version of
sort
that. Yeah, their
for
flavor.
Sparks. Yeah. So again, it was really cool though because it was trying to tie it in with either the world or the level at the time. It was just a still like neat little side feature.
I have a question. What was your favorite world?
Who?
All of you.
Oh.
Is the third one the one that's got like the whole nighttime theme to it?
The world or the level? There's a
It's a
level that's
level.
so
Yeah.
Dark Hollow was the only one I could think of at the top of my head that was a nighttime theme
I think
level.
that's the one. Yeah, I really like that one.
Because it had very calm again, and that was another one with the very instant memory core of like the music was like do 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 do, do and it was calming music, and that one again had like the introduction of the fireproof shields and stuff too was in Dark Hollow, and it was such like a nice. It had like really good ambience, whatever the word is, and the music was really calm and gentle, and the colors were phenomenal because it was just nighttime colors. You just had like different arrays of blues and stuff. That was
Well, and
that was a favorite level.
Spyro himself like has a different color palette at that point as well.
Did he?
Yeah, he's like this darker tint to him.
Oh, I guess yeah, because then I guess if they're trying to like make it more nighttime, that would make more sense.
Yeah, he looks really cool.
I'm trying to find a favorite world. Hold up.
I would probably have to say my favorite was the the Bayou. Was that the what Beastmakers or?
Yes, Beastmakers is the Bayou.
Yeah.
That one
I
is
certainly don't
good.
know which one it is, but mine, and this is the Reunited trilogy. I don't know what it looked like on the PlayStation, but it was a very cavernous level, and there was just these giant crystals, I believe. I've been playing a ton of different video games, so maybe I'm mixing something else up because I just went through and replayed Metroid Prime, and there's some beautiful, really, really gorgeous levels there. So I might be mixing something up, but it was
Caverny ones, Magic Crafters World,
with
that may be it.
with the iron spiders.
Iron Spiders.
Iron Spiders.
Oh,
It's been a couple weeks since I beat this game.
Oh, unless you mean the ants, the giant like metal ants, I believe are in.
are those
Actually,
ants?
no, Magic Crafters. Yeah, I think they're. I think I know what you're talking about. I'm trying to find in my notes because I actually wrote about them a little bit. Because is that the one you had to like get the kiss from a fairy so that you can blow them up, or you had to
Yeah, I
supercharge
believe
them? 'Cause
so.
they're
Yeah.
entirely made of metal. Yeah.
And go ahead and talk about that mechanic if you would.
The kiss from the fairy.
Yeah.
So there is, and I think it was only really in Magic Crafters World where that was like the whole like wizardy ones, and another mechanic of like they could like raise platforms on you that was like from the ground, so just like raise like a cylinder platform on you, or turn stairs into like slick where you just fall because
They like to
jerks.
move stuff around for no reason.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there it was all about fairies in that world too. Like yeah, you had like the wizards picking on the fairies and stuff, and but you couldn't really die here. There was like big beautiful mountain areas, giant gaps, and that was for the supercharge that was everywhere in there. And if you fell in the crater or whatever, a bunch of fairies would just whoop, pick you up
Pick
and
you
then
up.
just pluck you down and just put you down on the platform like there you go. And during there was also throughout the spiral levels, I think you only come across it like twice. There is this large fairy and she's dressed in red. And what she would do is she would kiss you on the snoot, and then Spyro would turn all red and blushy. And I guess it was like their way of they had a special power. They mentioned, I think one of the trapped crystallized dragon mentions it way later. If you get a kiss from a fairy, it's considered to be very magical or something. And it supercharges Spyro. And when that happens, you can run around and kill anything with a flame that you normally couldn't kill before, which typically is larger enemies. So like the larger guys wearing metal, you can't flame down, and you had to get them during like a weak spot or something. And they're like, as Toph mentioned, there's like these giant metal ant things. But if you had the supercharge, or sorry, like the super flame, I guess, then you can take them out in one flame go because it was like that puffed up, and it only lasted
Like 10 seconds.
yeah, it wasn't very
it's
long. I
quick.
think depending what level you were, it was either seconds or maybe a minute or two. It wasn't very long. And that was just supposed to be like the quick buff. But you can run back to her, get the kiss again, and then run and kill what you need to do. Because again, you needed it for the gems anyway.
I have a question, and I may be misremembering something right here. Did you need that fairy as well for the large inclines, or was that you could just run through those?
Those, yeah, as long as you just held the run button.
Okay.
Yeah.
The more of those arrows you. Oh, I don't know.
That's what
Actually,
it
I
was.
was going to ask, like, did it actually matter how many of those arrows you hit? Because like one of the dragons said, try the charges. The more these charges you hit, the faster you go. But I pretty much noticed it's like you hit as soon as you hit turbo speed,
That
you're just going
platform.
turbo speed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
As long as you're on the platform, it works. Like you just had to be pretty much stepping on the platform, start your charge from there, and it takes about 2 seconds for it to actually like rev up for you actually start the supercharge, which also was a pain in the butt to
Oh,
aim.
I was talking about the ramps where it's got the little arrows that as long as you're running, you like go faster and faster.
Yeah, that's the supercharge. For his head charging.
Yeah, you guys are both talking about the same thing.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Because I have a picture with the arrows on it that I drew.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, when you're saying
job,
talking about
Chris.
being on it for a couple seconds, sorry, I didn't know what you meant.
Yeah, no, as
Sorry.
long as you were starting your run on that platform, it would
Right.
trigger it, and then you would start your supercharge. Because I remember always in that level, there was the mountain size, and you had one or two like little caverns you had to pick when you did supercharge to run into them, because I'm pretty sure it just kind of like did ring around the rose and you would come back out the other end. But I always when you're charging, if you let go of the charge mid one run, you can kind of fall a little bit, and then if you start again, you actually keep your charge for the most part. But aiming your charge I found it so difficult because again, that corner clipping, if you were barely there, barely by it counted as you smacking into a wall and you lost your entire supercharge, to which a lot of those things you needed because a lot of them was like you had to use that supercharge in order to break a chest that was only breakable during a supercharge. And it would make the course very difficult of like sharper turns, and you had to jump at certain times because the floor was uneven. And again, if you were even remotely close, you lost the charge.
Cory did a little bit of background research for us while we were talking, and he looked up that door that you were talking about earlier.
Oh, the one in
Cory,
Reignited?
Yes.
Be prepared to be disappointed.
Oh no.
Cory.
What?
Do you want to talk about the door?
Oh, I thought you were gonna do it. No,
you looked it up.
I don't care. It's like a paragraph. So it looks like it's just an unfinished thing. So it says that it does not open at any point in the game, and when you charge it, it shakes as though something is on the other side.
Yeah.
But it's the only door in the game that acts like that, and there's like a bunch of speculation to what it was supposed to be. But the only thing that occurs is if you glitch past it, there's like a little hallway back there, but there's really no like finished product.
Why did they even bother putting it in? They could have just closed it off.
Well, they probably had it coded in, and then they were like, "It looks cool, and it's done."
We'll just leave it.
Yeah, it's just flair at that point.
That's funny.
And it does get people talking, and just creates that buzz about it before someone goes and uses hacks to figure it out. So going through all these worlds, like I said, I didn't take very detailed notes. I was just kind of along for the ride, but eventually you get to the final stage, and I didn't even realize it was the final stage until I checked my guidebook. And I had died in Nasty Nork's level maybe 4 times or so. And that was almost exclusively because I fell off the ledge while dashing, which was something you talked about a second ago.
Yeah.
That it can be kind of difficult to maneuver when you're going so fast. Overall, it was a much easier boss than I expected for a final boss.
Yeah.
The ending itself felt pretty rushed to me, which is odd because there's some post-game content like we talked about earlier. If you 100% the game, there's an extra area that opens up that otherwise won't. But that said, that area could have been made earlier on in development, and then as they were progressing through the rest of the game, they're like, all right, we got to slap together a final boss fight, and then just for giggles, we'll add in this area that we had already completed, and that'll just be post-game. But the level itself, the very last level you have, it's weird, I guess, because the level consists of you rushing around after those egg thieves that Sabi mentioned much earlier. And this time they're carrying keys. After you defeat one, you can unlock a door, which exposes another one, and you just run around in circles on this little track. And then eventually you'll unlock the second key, and that allows you to go after Nasty himself. And again, it's a very similar concept where you are chasing after him and you belch flames on him and he will run to a new area. And this only occurs twice. So it's a very, very brief final boss where you're not really doing anything spectacular like you may have done with some of those earlier quote unquote bosses that aren't really much of bosses themselves. Then there's a brief cutscene at the end, and then the credits roll. And that's about it. After the credits, you're dropped off in front of one more dragon statue, which after rescuing, he tells you that in order to enter the final stage, you have to 100% the rest of the game.
You have to go back and do those flight levels.
Yeah, which did not happen on my end.
Neither did mine. I cheated. I watched the video.
I watched a video for the end, like the absolute ending.
Yeah, I did too, because I wasn't going back for those. That dedication I didn't have.
Chris and Cory, did you guys watch the end?
I told you that I didn't even put more than 20 minutes to a crack at this. You think I was at the end?
All right. Well, after you 100%
I didn't realize how close I was to the end though, so maybe Gibbs and I will finish this up sometime soon.
You really should. It's a fun game, especially for kids.
I'm sure Gibbs will.
Well, the crazy thing is like, oh sorry, you first, Sean.
I was just going to talk about the ending of the game. So go ahead and speak your piece, and then I'll kind of close it out with how the game truly ends.
I think mine dealt with that because it was about Nasty Narc's treasure portal.
Oh,
Okay, well, okay, you just spilled all then.
Sorry. Go on.
Okay, so if you do 100%, a new area called Nork's treasure portal is opened, and a secret ending can be unlocked if you retrieve everything inside of that treasure portal. And in the ending, Spyro is seen getting interviewed on television, very similar to the very introduction of the game, where another spell is placed on the dragons that prompts Spyro to set out on yet another adventure. And it's just 100%ing for sequel bait. That's it.
Yeah.
The two endings are relatively similar because like the first ending they're doing the interview, but the second ending, if you 100% it, Spyro's actually wearing sunglasses like a cool dragon.
Oh.
And
Oh.
he gets
Like
that
a
only
cool
after
dragon.
you get like 100% of the game. He's pretty much repeating. It's just about repeating the same thing. I think there's only minor differences with the interview. But yeah, he's actually wearing sunglasses in the second one.
He
Hold on,
says,
I can
"You
look real quick.
dig?" After
Pretty
every
much.
Throws up
Um,
the surfs up cowabunga.
Let's see, ending part 2, another interview with Spyro. Yeah, I just put like he's wearing some sweet shades.
I love the notes that you took for
And
this game.
the background. Oh, in the background, a sheep is chasing one of the Norks instead, rather than the sheep's always being chased. You see like a one sheep, and there's like one Nork left, and it's like chasing after him. And then there's 2 dragons using a sheep for a basketball in the background. That's for the alternate ending. So I thought that was so funny. And thanks. I enjoyed a lot of my notes. But yeah, no, that was one of the crazy parts, or very interesting parts of the different endings if you actually 100% the game. Were you gonna talk about what happened in the Nasty Nork's treasure? I totally like botched for you. I'm sorry.
I didn't watch any gameplay about that. So if you have that, go ahead and talk about it.
I do. So, okay, remember how we were very upset about the whole flying situation in Spyro? Well,
Oh,
in
no.
the treasure cove, Nasty's like loot area, you actually there was a bunch of like doors I believe you had to open, and there's no when you get in this level, there is no Norks. It's like it's a factory setting. There's no Norks, and it almost feels creepy because uh there's just no Norks there. Instead, there's egg guys. The sorry, what are they called?
Little thieving
Just
egg
thieves.
Egg thieves.
Yeah, the thieves, and they're holding keys, and you have to go run around and chasing them. And there's several gems and treasures, and the entire level for that you can fly on command. It is the
Wow.
only level
Whoa.
you can fly. So if like and it's most of like they're on the ground, and then there's a couple of them where the little treasure guys like get into a plane and they start flying around the level, and you have to just jump, double jump, and then you'll start flying, and you have to go there, blow up his plane to get the other key, and all these keys are leading up to open like his actual treasure portal thing. And yeah, it's the only one you can actually fly because I even put that in big words on my notes because I was so mad. Yeah, one of them has a key, and it just does plane chases, some lava pipes. There is a total of 2,000 gems there.
I was going to ask you guys. Every once in a while, I get like a skill point gained. What do the skill points do in this game?
They're for the 120% completion.
I think that's just for like the extras that you see that you can at the I'm not explaining this well. I think that that's just for the beginning part of the game where you can check out the extras like concept art.
Oh,
and
okay, okay.
stuff
So
like
it's
that.
not actually like gameplay related. It's because I was like, what skills does he have? He doesn't have any skills.
It just says unlocks concept art.
Okay.
Yeah. So I think it's a great place for us to kind of close out this segment, and we'll take a break, and then we'll come back with our final thoughts. Does it sound good?
Yeah.
Sure.
All right. Well, we will be back, and when we do, we're also going to announce 2 more winners for our eShop codes. So all of the Hollow Knight codes are gone now. They've been claimed by everybody. So there are still 3 Celeste codes and 1 moving out. So if you are interested in this giveaway, I hope that you will continue to subscribe on our YouTube channel, to follow us on Twitter, and join our Discord, because there will still be 1 more giveaway after this. And then at the very end of the month, or really on April 1st, we're going to announce the winner for the Legend of Zelda Link's Awakening Switch physical giveaway. Welcome back, everybody. This is our last segment. It's our final thoughts where we talk about how we feel about Spyro. Is this something we're going to continue to play? Are we going to play the sequels? We touched on that a little bit earlier. For me, Spyro the Dragon is a very charming game. It was definitely a welcome change to some of the other games that we played. In terms of difficulty, at least, it was a very laid-back experience. But I doubt that I'm ever going to play this particular game again. But I might play the sequels if there's enough interest in covering those games. I will say that one thing that I kept expecting to happen was
What?
that I and you touched on this a little bit, Chris. I kept expecting for my character to get stronger or progress and be like, after so many dragons saved or recovering so many stolen eggs, I thought I'd be rewarded with more abilities, like the ability to glide further or jump
Right.
higher or shoot a longer flame, but that never came. If the sequels have some type of progression that makes me feel like I'm actually moving forward with my character, I might be a little more inclined to try those on my own. And as far as my stats go, I rescued 70 dragons. I rescued 8 eggs. I found 7,906 jewels, which was 72% completion overall. And I completed this game in exactly 4 hours and 20 minutes.
Nice.
Nice. Yeah, so I felt like the game took much, much longer than that. But when I looked at my total time count, I was like, oh, just over 4 hours? This game went by very quickly.
It does. It really does.
Cory, what do you think?
What do I think about what? About Spyro? I
Yeah,
think
you
Spyro's
know,
fun.
Local politics, the
Okay,
weather.
let's get into that. No, Spyro's a lot of fun. I enjoyed it. I also have no interest in returning to it. As I said, it's really just it's a exploration and kind of a celebration of like an open world artistic, fun adventure game, and I really have no need to go through it again, so I really am not going to be returning to it. But if you've never seen it, you've never played it, like, I wholeheartedly recommend it. It's a fun, just it's kind of mindless in a way. Like, you really don't have to do anything except run around and explore and shoot your little flame at people and just have a good time with it. So anyone looking to just relax, like, I think it's a good title.
Well said. Chris?
I definitely recommend it if you got kids. If you want to get somebody,
especially for children.
yeah, if you want to introduce somebody into family-friendly, appropriate, children-appropriate video games, this is definitely a winner. Yeah, but that's pretty much where I'll leave it. I don't think I'm going to be playing it anymore. I mean, I will with Gibbs, but I mean, solo, no. But yeah, I mean, it's just a fun little, pretty kids game. So yeah.
All right, Sabi, tell us what you think.
I think I've said it plenty of times before how much I really enjoyed this game. It really is great for what it is, and the reignited version is honestly, pretty much exactly what Topher said or Chris. It's great if you want to like get your kids involved or even try it for yourself. Like it's such a beautiful, especially in Reignited, it's a beautiful game that they remade it into. And going into like the second one is also great because they finally gave you some extra things that you can do, such as swimming, and that was a huge thing. Um, so I mean, I could see I obviously I could be one to play it again, but every now and so often I might pick it up, but it's truly a great game. I played a lot of this as a kid. It was definitely just my getaway of having, after having a bad day or I just wanted to sink a lot of time into something. Spyro was one of my top go-tos next to Crash Bandicoot, but Spyro was just a lot more easier going is
It's
a
wholesome.
lot less, yeah, it's a lot less stressful situations like than Crash Bandicoot. But I thoroughly enjoyed it. There's a lot of like little funny things that happen in the game. Like one of the levels, if you're blowing people up and one of the Norks, if you don't pay attention to him, even though he's scared of you, but if you look away from him, he'll actually turn around and pull down his pants and moon you and show you his butt.
Huh.
I don't know if they put that in Reignited, but it was definitely in the original because I remember I had to like leave my game for a second and I was either eating something, drinking something. All of a sudden, I noticed this guy and he pulls his pants down, he's shaking his butt, and I was like, "Are you kidding me?" And then yeah, it's just funny little things that you can find in the game. And like Spyro will also get very sassy with you if you stop playing the game, if you leave the controller down. He'll kind of just like side glance you and like break that wall and just look right at you and be like, hello, what are we doing here?" It's a really good game for that time. It's great. I absolutely loved it.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing all that. And for everybody out there, it's that time again. We're going to give away 2 more codes for Switch eShop games.
Drum
Again,
roll.
these are North American games, so keep that in mind if you are one of the winners. We already went ahead and we got a random number generator. And Sabi, will you tell us the first winner?
The first winner is Viz.
That's VIS. Congratulations. I'm going to hit you up on Twitter. And who's our second winner?
A name I'm about to butcher most likely, but it's looks like it's Matthew Scaraz.
Both of you, congratulations on winning. Viz, you were the first winner, so you get to pick the first choice of game. And like I said before, we have 3 eShop codes for Celeste and 1 more for moving out. So, Matthew, if Viz picks that moving out code, that means that you're automatically getting a Celeste. You can use it yourself or you can regift it to someone else. And for everyone else out there, if you are interested in this drawing, we still have 2 more codes. It means that our next game, we're going to do yet another giveaway. You can find me on Twitter at ReviewByte. That's review BYTE. You can join our Discord server and you can hit up our YouTube channel and just follow us on there. Each one of those things will give you a drawing into this giveaway. And like I mentioned, we are going to be covering Link's Awakening for the Game Boy Color, and the Switch. And I am offering the Switch as a physical copy. And I'm going to mail that out to whomever wins this drawing, this giveaway. Everybody is eligible, even if you've already won in the past. And I'm going to do that on April 1st.
No joke.
No joke. Our next game is going to be Jurassic Park for the Super Nintendo. So look forward to that. Chris and Cory, thank you always for taking the time to talk about old video games with me. It is always such a pleasure.
But of
Love it.
course.
And Sabrina, a big thanks to you for taking the time and taking such extensive notes and even printing and painting an amazing Spyro sculpture. Where can people find you if they want to buy figurines like that or commission you to paint their own?
You can find me at Painting Myth on Facebook or on Instagram. And I will be posting Spyro things very soon. When by the time this episode comes out, I will be posting mine at the same time. So the figurines you can find on Painting Myth, drawings and such you can find on Facebook at Sabi Studios.
And that's SABI Studios, correct?
Correct.
Okay, and I'm going to add those links in the show notes. So, Sabi, just make sure that you shoot those over to me so I get them exactly right because I don't want to mess this up.
Sounds good.
For all of you out there, thank you so much for listening to us talk about video games. This is such a pleasure. This was episode 26, and we're just going to keep on going as we progress through the rest of 2023, talking about games that came out in 1993 and 1998. Thank you so much. Until next time, this has been Superannuated Starman.